Welcome to the Creative Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lopez Jr. Follow us on Twitter at CreativeCoach47 and on YouTube at Creative Coaching Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks a bunch for listening. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, I'm glad I can make it. Thanks for having me. We've finally been able to connect. Been trying to make this happen for quite some while, so I feel like I've made it now, huh?
Yeah, no, man. You finally, that's it. The field of 65, whatever, right? This is it right here. This is the real deal. You can tell Jeff Goodman I said that too.
I will let him know.
Been trying to get him on for a minute too, but it'll happen. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on, man, and making some time and taking the time to be with us, man. Really do. Shout out to Kevin Sutton for helping me with this too, because without my man, I don't know if I've been able to get this close to the sun like this.
No, that's my guy. He knows. If he tells me I got to do it or to do it, I'm doing it. So, well,
got
worry about that.
Got you, Randolph. Let me start off like I do every podcast, man. And how were you introduced to the game of basketball coming out the DMV?
Wow. You know what? I got my start. I was a football guy, right?
Okay.
I was 13 years old, excuse me, and I moved out of D.C. and we had just moved into Maryland. And I was trying to it was right before school started, and I was trying to find a place to play basketball, and I couldn't. It was too late. I went to Allentown's boys club to try to play football, and they told me it was too late to play football, that the only sport I could sign up for was basketball. So
yeah.
That was it. That was the first time that I started playing basketball. And I don't know if you watched The Love in DC. Jamie Tyler's there. His dad, my coach, and he was. I still call him coach to this day. We're still friends to this day. So we joke about that. But that was my first coach, and that was my first time playing basketball. I didn't pick up a ball and organize until I was 13 years old.
Wow, interesting, man. That seems kind of late, right, for somebody who got as far as you did, right?
Yeah.
But it was a different time where we didn't need trainers and things like that. We kind of just got after it on our own, seemingly. Now, I want to ask you about your experience with those who coached you coming up, because, usually we coach how we've been coached. How was that for you coming up throughout the years?
Well, it's a great segue from what you just asked me about my start. I'm a product of really good coaches, and why my acceleration was so fast. I mean, I didn't have any bad habits. I was just taught the fundamental way to play the game, and I was just able to go out and work on those things. So though I started late, I didn't pick up any of the bad habits that sometimes you have to break as a coach or a trainer, for that matter, when you're coaching someone. So my coaches are everything. They've been such a huge part of my life, and all in different ways. I think when I got to high school, I just played pickup ball. My confidence came. We talked about Allentown Boys Clubs, Coach Tyler and those guys just giving me the belief that I was good enough to be out there. Again, I was 13 years old. I had no clue how good I was or wasn't. I remember a funny story about in high school when I went to Friendly High School, and my freshman year I was there, and I'm JV, and we had a really good team. My class of guys, I think it was Dickie Simpkins, who's an NBA player, was in that class, and there's a couple other guys, James Stevens, Jamie Tyler. We just talked about. All of us were freshmen, and we were JV. And when we walked in the gym, we had the form shoot.
Yeah.
So how kids get a ball, you go in the gym, you kind of mess around, throwing up shots and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was Coach Henderson walks in that gym, and he goes off, and he just runs us. And he was like, when you walk in my gym, you form shoot. And if the basket's full, you use a wall.
Wow.
And that stuck with me to this day, because to this day, when I'm working guys out and they want to shoot, I will form shoot with them and then start doing stuff like that. It's just one of those things that stuck with me. And then recently we just lost George Leftwich, was a coach of mine at Gwynn Park High School, where we won a state championship. And he was another great coach. I transferred in there, didn't know much. He was a great player and coach, and helping me continue to grow and develop, and again teaching me a strong fundamental base. And we won a state championship as a sophomore. I was a sophomore, and I was only there that 1 year with him. And then he calls me in his office after the season and says, "Hey, I think you got a chance to be really good at this." And he calls Stu Veteran, Kevin Sutton down at Flint Hill, and that's where I went. And after I went there, then it became a national thing with the development, being on the court with those guys. And, you know, I don't need to say much about those two guys. I mean, Coach Vetter is a Hall of Famer, one of the best high school coaches that we've ever had. And Sutton, I think, is just so underrated in who he is and what he brings to the game of basketball. And the new head coach is St. Stephen's down in Florida, so I'm expecting those guys to be great there. So that was my product. And then getting to college with Coach and Dave Odom. So though I started late, my coaches have been such a huge – I talk to all of them, you know, today. You know, I still talk to Jamie Tyler and his dad, and obviously we just lost Coach Leftwich. I talked to Stu Vetter, and I talked to, you know, there's not anyone I probably talk more to than Kevin Sutton. And I still live in North Carolina, and I still talk to Coach Odom, and obviously, you know, with his family and what that means to me and what we mean to each other. So the impact of coaching is I'm living proof of what great coaching and positive coaching can turn your life into.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's something that I think every player can't say that they've had, right? And a lot of them sometimes are fueled by the fact that they've had bad coaching, unfortunately. But you weren't that wasn't the case with you, and that's fantastic, man. So now I want to ask you about your playing experience, right? Because, you know, most of us, everybody who watches this knows who you are, knows how you've played, where you played, and so I want to ask you, what was your experience like? Because we saw it from the outside, like at Wake and stuff like that, and in the NBA a little bit overseas. And we could think one thing of it from the lens that we look at, but how was that experience for you, kind of coming through that whole situation? What was it like for you playing the game of basketball?
I felt like I was an overachiever. I needed to outwork everybody. It was just something that I felt like I was behind, and I was young. I was also a young guy. Like I'm graduating at 17 years old, going to college, walking on campus at 17, not 19 or 20 like some of these other guys. I was really young then. So I always felt like I had to outwork people to catch up because I was just so late playing the game. I didn't know that fundamentally it was correct until later in life. I just thought I was so far behind. So that was always like a chip, and it was always something that motivated me that, you know, I came from – the game was new, the attention and all the accolades and everything else came later, and, you know, once I had earned those things. But if I was recruited today, I would have been one of those guys who just would have came out of nowhere. You wouldn't have known much about through my high school journey. I only played 2 years of AAU basketball. You know, back then it was more popular to play to work out with your high school. It's kind of like this thing goes in waves. We played with my AAU team. I think I stopped at 15. I think I played 14 and 15 with Charles Harrison and Grant Hill. We won the nationals, and I never played. When I went to high school, that was it. We just worked out, and it was a high school thing. We didn't spend as much time. And then now, obviously, we know how impactful AAU is, and how much it's a big part of the development of these young men and women. So for me, that wasn't the case. I didn't play any of that in high school. I played at 15 and under U in middle school, and then after that, I went to high school and I was done.
Yeah, you know, you talk about AAU back in those days, man. You have to fill out a card.
It was totally different because remember, I played in Potomac Valley, and you can only send 2 teams to the nationals.
Yeah.
So what was funny about it was my first year I played, and Charles Harrison, former college teammate of mine as well, and his team beats mine, and then you could take 2 players that didn't make it. So that year it was his team, and it was I think DC Assault, and I chose to go with Charles Harrison, and we go. The following year we're together, we get eliminated. It's Grant Hill's team, and it's DC Assault, and then he and I go play with Grant Hill team, and then we go and we win the nationals. And so and again, after that, I think, like I said, I said 15. I think it might have been 13 and under. I forget now. That's such a long time ago. And after we won it, we joke about it. Like Grant still has, you know, he had it converted from DVDs and stuff to, it's. I won't dare say digital because it's so old, but he's upgraded it. So we tease each other about what we looked like back then playing in those times. But no, it's. The impact of all those coaches is vital, and I never forget that. And like I said, they are friends and people that, as I make decisions in my life, and I'm an adult now in my 50s, and I'm still leaning on those coaches now.
Yeah. So it's like, even at the college level, even the high school level, sometimes we
Right.
talk about 4 years, but more like 40 years, right? That whole
Yeah.
concept of it being a lifelong type of situation. And
With
that's
the right
very
people.
impactful. Yeah.
With the right people, it is. And my experience was just great. I mean, it's a struggle. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's not meant to be hard. It's like it's always like going in the weight room.
Yeah.
You have a goal in the weight room. You want to get to bench press 225, and then was waiting on you. 230's waiting on you, and then it's 235, and then so you're never going to conquer it. You learn to enjoy the journey, and so when you're in it, you can't understand it. I've had so many major injuries in my career
Yeah.
that stand out, and those things that at the time you're thinking they're really, really disappointing, and then you find out that they're not. And my first big injury was coming into campus at Wake. I get here in 90 and have a really good freshman year. And I think I'm runner up to my college, my teammate, Rodney Rogers, who won freshman of the year. And we make the NCAA tournament, and we had a great time. And then so we had camp the following year, the summer. And I'm in camp, and I'm going in for a layup, and I plant after getting the ball from one of my teammates, and my knee gives away. Tear my ACL.
Yep.
At that time, this is 1990. It's not like now where you're like, all right, you'll be back 6 to 8 months or whatever it is. I mean, at that time, it was considered, career threatening.
Yeah.
And I was concerned. I remember sitting in my room. I'm talking about not to get too spiritual or biblical or anything like that, but it's funny. It's a funny story about this. So now, again, I go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I have the surgery. I'm crying. I mean, I am like, it's over. I had so much going for me. I had a chance to make it, blah, 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 the same sob story. I'm in the hospital room, and they put me in a room. I have the surgery. My legs kind of elevated. They put me in an empty room, and I had all these guests. I'm getting this mail. I'm having all these guests, and it was just too many people coming in. So I had a fever. They couldn't break my fever. So finally, my doctor comes in, and he's like, look, it's too much. He needs his rest. We got to clear this out. But it was policy of the of the hospital, that if you had a guest, you had another roommate, that you could only have 2 people in the room. So they bring a roommate in. And I'll never forget this. And Jerry Wainwright, who's a former Division I coach, and a lot of people know him. He's in my room with his wife at the time.
Yeah. And
they wheel this guy in, and he's missing a leg.
Whoa.
Fresh from surgery, he's missing a leg. And the doctors come and they wheel him in, and he's in and out of it. And the story was he had lost his, I think he had lost his daughter or his wife. They were on a motorcycle, and he had a motorcycle accident with his wife. And then he ended up losing his wife and a motorcycle. It was just a real tragic story.
Yeah.
And he walks in, and I instantly stop crying because he has no leg. I'm crying about an ACL.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a leg. Yeah. And I didn't cry anymore. And I sat, and it just added so much, just an honest reality of where I was, and like get over yourself, my man.
Yeah.
I come back to Wake to coach, and the athletic department's chief financial officer, CFO in the athletic department, who I'm working with at the time. Yeah. And we're on the game. We're playing Boston College on the road one day, and he's traveling this particular trip. And he says, "Hey, Randolph, I don't know if you remember this, but I visited you I was in the room with you in the hospital when you tore your ACL." I'm like, I'm like, okay, like I don't remember much about it. He says, "Yeah, my uncle was Mr. Anderson, the roommate, who was the guy that we were just sitting here talking about." And so I thought it was he would never believe the impact of that moment that had on me, complaining and crying about my ACL. And so it was just one of those things. Afterwards, again, I've had countless injuries. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. I mean, my body has been through it. I've paid a heavy price for playing basketball at the highest level, and and trying to sustain that. And I've had multiple surgeries, from broken jaws to broken nose, broken fingers. I've sacrificed my body quite a bit. But no, it's all part of the journey. I've learned, but that was the first one. So every injury that I had after was just like, hey, it's just God's plan. I gotta live with it. I gotta move on, and I will overcome it, because I've always felt I would.
Yeah, no, it's a different perspective, right? And a different approach that you take to every situation, overcoming certain things like that.
Right.
You realize that I'm going to get through this.
Right.
This is not going to be forever, and I'm not losing a limb, and I'm not losing a loved one. It's, it's just this is what you think at that moment. You don't think to yourself, you're a young kid freaking out, basically, that your career might be over, but you get to live to see another day. Right. Not everybody else does. So kind of a fresh perspective, man. I appreciate you sharing that story, man, because that's heavy stuff at the end of the day, man. Really, really is for us to put things into perspective. Now, I want to ask you about how it is now with being part of the media and being in the booth. How's your playing career and your coaching acumen helped you with that, as far as being able to help, I guess, bring things to life on the screen and over the broadcast?
It's everything. It made the transition seem seamless. I mean, there's natural adjustments. There's things you just don't know, right? Yeah. And I'll have people come to me now and they'll ask questions, and I'll say, hey, it's like basketball. Everybody's journey is different. I get it with a lot of coaches, like, how did you get your start, and so on and so forth. And I got a call and it was just like, hey, would you be available to do a couple of games? We'll see how it goes. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's try. They said, we'll give you 3 and we'll see how it goes from there. So I'm like, okay. And after the first game, I'll never forget, I got a call from Beth Chappell and others, another from ESPN, and they were saying, all right, we're going to sign you to the rest of the season.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that must have went well. But going into it, I had nerves. I mean, just to travel, to set up, everything else. I had no idea what was going on and what I did. My mind was on everything else but doing the job. And when I got to shoot around, I'll never forget, it was Louisville and Pitt, and it was Chris Mack and Jeff Capel. When I saw those guys in shoot around, and the play-by-play guy that was with me says, if we were at Louisville, and he says, Chris Mack doesn't come over and talk to us. He doesn't talk to the media.
Wow.
And so we're sitting there, and Chris comes over. Hey, Randolph, what's up? And instantly it was just like, okay, like,
yeah.
I don't know how all this works, but when I'm inside of that rectangle, that 94 feet, I know what's going on, and I'm very comfortable with what's going on. So it's been great, because it helps me, because I've been in so many different situations, right? I've been a player. I've been able to I know what it's like, or what you feel when you're taking that last shot, or when you're struggling. I know the ebbs and flow, confidence gained and lost as a player. But the decade I had of coaching was big, and now it allows me to when I'm watching film, I'm watching coaches, right? And I would watch coaches. So it's kind of funny. My wife teases me a little bit about this, because when I was a player, I would only watch the players.
Yeah.
Then when I started coaching, I started watching coaches. Like, hey, what does he do at the timeout? What systems does he prefer? All the ins and outs. Can I pick up on any patterns of them? And then now doing media, I'll listen to the people broadcasting the game. So, but it helped me tremendously, because it gave me a perspective, to be honest, that I don't know if a lot of people have, to be honest. I've done it at a high level in both ways. And coaching at in the ACC, which is, prior to most recent time, is still historically the best basketball conference there is. And I spent the summer with the Spurs, just kind of, going through I was just in awe of how they run their organization, to see, thanks to my friendship with Tim and those guys, that's just as good an organization as there is in any sport. And being able to spend some time there just helped me just really see what's going on from so many different angles. And I think it's helped me tremendously And all I needed to do was just I had to learn when to use those things and the information of it. But I felt as though my transition and my preparation to do this job is different than a lot of people because of what I was able to accomplish as a player, and then to be around coaches and be behind the scenes and know what it's like and know what they're going through. And I've, and some of the feedback that I get from some of the coaches, I think they see that as well.
That's cool, man. Like you talk about the Spurs. I mean, here down in San Antonio, man, I mean, Tim is highly held in high regard, right? And watching that organization my whole life, watching it go from where it started to where it's at, there's levels to that stuff, right? And even coaching, there's levels to it. So when you say you observe them and how they operate and function, you could probably see yourself, if you ever jump back into coaching, operating with that same type of level of excellence, right?
I said that to someone, Mike. I said that to someone. I said, if I was to ever get back in, I would be so much better. I've been around so many different people, and to see what works, what doesn't work. You get behind the scenes at times, and I've been fortunate enough to be allowed in the room with some of these guys, and you see why they're successful and why some you see why you can be like, I can see why they struggle some. And we were talking just a minute ago, and you're in San Antonio, and when I was with the Spurs in the summer, Mitch was coaching. Mitch was the summer league coach.
Yep.
This was 2021 when Mitch was the summer league coaching, and now obviously he's just been named the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. So super proud of him, and look forward to the team that they have, and expect great things out of Mitch. And what a great guy.
He didn't sneak up on anybody. If you ask me, he didn't sneak up on it. I mean, that's what people were saying. Like, where'd he come from? Like, he's been there. He's been that. He's got relationships with everybody. That's the thing people don't understand half the time, is that you can get a job because of your relationships as well. But in that organization, you better know what you're doing.
You better know it. You're going to learn.
Relationships isn't good enough. You got to know.
No, not building. And just a credit to him for all the people they could have chose for that job tells you enough when they chose Mitch. So really, really happy for him, and he's he's very deserving of that opportunity.
For sure. I'm happy with it as a Spurs fan. Very happy with it. Now, I want to ask you about going back to the college game. What's your assessment of all the newer era of NIL, portal, and re-recruiting, right? Because I mean, that's a big question, right? But if you had to narrow it down, what impact do you think it's had on the game?
Listen, I'm happy that the kids are getting paid. I will say that, because the one gripe that I have is people wanting to say we wanted to go back to the way it was, and no. That's no way we can do that. We need some policing. We do. I don't think the way we're going about it now is sustainable, but we've got to meet somewhere in the middle. We're getting contracts that, things are changing now. This thing has evolved so much. I said this the other day, going back to that summer we're talking about, right? Just 2021, which is not that long ago. Let's go back. Let's just say 5 years when NIL first came out. Yeah. I had a coach call me and say, and this is, Power 5 school. They're like, we're hearing that kids are getting $80,000. Are you kidding me? They're getting $80,000. Like, they were complaining about $80,000. Wow. and you fast forward it to now, and they're making millions. It's unbelievable. But listen, I'm not one of those guys that gripe about it. The only thing that I want to happen is, I don't like the fact that they get to move as much as they get to move, right? And it's hurting them because they're not graduating either. I get the money, but not all these guys are making millions. We tend to harp on the guys that are making the millions, and they're few and far between.
That's the exception.
Yeah. Most of these kids aren't doing that. They're not everybody's paying kids $1 million plus. So it's good money that I don't even know if they're going to have when they get older, because you're giving it to them at such a young age, and it's forcing them to grow up fast. But I wish that we would allow them to. And I've said this several times, for me, I wish we would go back to the rule of if you transfer after your junior year, you should sit out. I think
Yeah.
there's no reputable institution that's going to give you a degree in 1 year.
Yeah.
You can't transfer. These guys are transferring 4-year, 4 schools. Each school not accepting transcripts, so they're academically on the classroom. They're like juniors, and they have a full year to go, or a semester and a half, something, a couple of classes. They're just not close to graduating, and that is challenging to me. That's upsetting to me when you spend 4 years and 4 summers in college, and for some cases 5, the most recent 5, the COVID year guys, even though that's gone, and a lot of these guys have not graduated. So if we can add that, that's over now as far as the COVID year. But if we can do something to make sure that the athletes are graduating, because I know everybody thinks they're a pro and they want to be a pro, and the reality is we all know the numbers, and that the reality of that's happening. And then with the NBA league, where a quarter of the league is turning over every year anyway, so it isn't about making it; it's about sustainability. And guys don't understand that. And then the other thing I think that I don't think people do from a national perspective of this that would help with this is I don't think anyone is honest about what it's like being overseas. Just it's like a mystery, this fairy tale that it's tax-free money, and it's that they will cut you in a heartbeat and send you home.
Sure.
So the one thing I do like about now is what the NIL has done is it's kept kids in college. A lot of them didn't turn. We have one of our lowest numbers of guys foregoing eligibility to go to the NBA or attempt to go to the NBA than we've had in quite some time. So there are some good out of. I'm happy for all the athletes, the money that they're making, and man, I laugh at. I wish I could go back in time and be a part of this era myself, but. But no, I don't. I mean, my biggest thing is graduating. If you can make sure that we figure out a way that they can graduate, they're deserving a piece of the pie. And you're not going to make that argument, because I know what it's like to what we went through, and we weren't able to get any of it.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's already, that ship sailed. There's no bringing it back. There's no way you upset too many people. But I do believe when you talked about oversight and regulation, I guess there needs to be a commissioner, things of that nature. Somebody to kind of oversee the whole situation, because if they're operating like pros, and I say pros, I didn't say professionals, but pros, you need to have a body organized to oversee that whole thing, because the NCAA,
it's great. Like, it's getting ready to turn into a mess, because even under the model that it is now, I would imagine that they're sitting there with a Title IX lawsuit, like this piece of paper right here, just ready to hand it over. It's already typed up and ready to submit. So I mean, it's just, even the current model we have now, I don't know how it's sustainable. Everyone it's never going to be a level playing field, no matter what everyone says. Not every school can spend the $20.5 million. Where is that coming from? Not every school is going to be able to do that. And I'm talking about Power 5 schools, or Power 4 now. It's just, it needs to be regulated, and I think it needs to be done from a federal government standpoint. Once the federal government gets involved, I know there's some conversations at some point, but those things need to be expedited.
Yeah, we talk about your man Grant Hill. I think he'll have a lot to do with that. If you ask me, just prognosticating it, he have a lot to do with that. He seems.
Well, we're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna call him afterwards and say, man, you got to hurry up and get this done. Then I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna call him afterwards.
Get a lot done. Him and Coach K, they could get something done with this.
That's true. That's true.
I believe that.
Now, good for sure.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you, Coach, about mentorship. How important? You talked about your coaches,
right?
But even now, as a professional broadcaster now, and as a college coach, if you jump back into that, how important has mentorship been to you throughout your professional coaching career and broadcasting? How's that worked for you?
It's the most important thing, I think, of anything. I mean, you need to pull people up.
Yeah.
And the problem with college athletics is that this, particularly now, it's changing so much. I don't know. It's the way you go about it now has to change.
Yeah.
This meaning the way you coach now. If you're a coach now and you're traditionally you were like, hey, I do it all. I do the X and O's. I handle everything. I don't know if you can do that anymore. You have to delegate, right? You have to delegate because if not, you're missing out on something. You can do it, any way you want, and it has to be successful. But I think you get more out of. I love watching the coaches who seem to have players constantly plucked from their tree. And I'm not just talking about like Duke or somewhere like that, but Rick Barnes does a great job with his staff of getting guys opportunities outside of that. There's different ways that you do that. I mean, I don't want to get into naming names because there's no way I can name them all, and I don't know how everyone else does. But that's why we do this, right? You want to do a job. You want to make sure those around you prosper and get them opportunities that they want. When I spoke with Sutton, he asked me to speak to his coaches one time, and I said that. I said that to the head coaches that were on the call. It's like, it's your responsibility to ask your staff members, like, hey, what do you want out of this? Having guys in the room, they're not just there to make you look good. You do that, but for them, it's like, hey, what do you want to get out of this? Is being a head coach what you want to do? This? These are some of the things that you need to do. Maybe come along with me to these meetings, or not just people go around these round tables and just say, hey, come to this clinic and do all these things. Like, really tell them what's going on. How did you get the job? Is it because you were close with an AD? Or were you close to it? Were you associated with a search firm? Like, some of these things, I just don't think you have to be honest with people when you say, you got to know who you are and what you're doing. And sometimes, like I've said that to people, when I've said, like, hey, sometimes a name comes across their desk. It may be mine, it may be yours. Who do you think is going to get it?
Yeah.
And you can be more qualified. Sometimes it's just as honest as that. And so, but mentorship it's what it's all about. I think but not everybody maybe understands how important that is, because sometimes you lose your way in this. You get in this industry now, particularly now, and I say today, you don't know what the rules and what's going on year to year. And I think sometimes if you're just focusing on that and you're not focusing on the people that are there day to day, it can be miserable, and there's too many hours in a coaching job. There's not enough hours in a day for any Division I coach anyway. I mean, the sacrifices these coaches make for their families, the sacrifices they make. You spend more time with other people's kids than your own. You're chasing kids you'll never get, spending more time with them than your own children, and no one cares. The mentorship is so much more important about how to balance their personal life as it is their professional life. It's why the mentorship is so important. So, when you do it well, and some people don't know how. Some coaches struggle with the balance. They don't know how. It's a challenge, and not everybody has mastered that challenge. And that's something you just can't quantify by wins and losses. But mentorship is something that I think all coaches should strive for. And I think the game is heading in the direction where you just can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
You're going to have to rely on people and delegate responsibility, allow them to feel a part of what's going on.
And I think that speaks to the whole GM position now, right? I mean, these general managers coming into the college game, that role will probably evolve into like an actual general manager spot, where they have almost the same, like in football, some general managers can hire and fire coaches now. I don't know if it'll do that in college basketball.
Well, Mike, what's funny? I've said this to coaches, and some of them have agreed. The concern you have with that now is it's interesting because you're talking about hiring that person in, and you're right. So who hires the GM? Sometimes it's the coaches that are hiring the GM.
Yeah.
But now he's spending money from the university. So who is that person reporting to?
Right.
Or is the university hiring the general manager?
The AD.
And then that creates an issue because, as you know, when you're in your coach's room, that's a tight knit. Hey, we're able to say and discuss things in this room that a head coach is usually the high. Just thinking like, hey, I trust everybody in this room. I can say and that creates a little bit of uncomfortable, like you're like, I don't know. We got, hey, Mike's here. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Mike's here. We're talking, so it,
Yeah. Ixnay.
it's just going to create some tension, I believe,
Yeah.
because you don't know how that's going to come. Those have to be figured out. Like, I think some coaches some programs have been ahead of it already. They have GMs and the coaches were involved in that. And then now you're seeing some GMs are being hired and they're coming from the outside and they're hired from the university. And that's just, people say what they want. When you're in that room, and coaches are very careful about who they want in that room.
Yeah.
And who hires the general managers now. That's a big deal, and it's gonna be a wrestling match to see where this goes and how that goes.
Yeah, because you can delegate a lot of different things, but what you don't want to over delegate is influence and what the culture you've built with your coaches. Because, like you're saying, there's those closed door meetings where it's like, hey, look, we don't even have to say it. It goes without saying. You don't leak whatever we're talking about here.
Right. Because we got to discuss, Mike. We're behind the scenes talking about how much money we want to give this kid. If we don't want to give that kid this much, we want to take money from this. And we start, there's just conversations that we want to stay right there.
Yeah.
And that person has to go report that outside of your office and your room and stuff. So I think it's just put everybody that's more of an issue than I think people are kind of talking about right now because it's so new. Yeah. But it was one of the first things that I thought about when it happened was just like, wow, that's going to create some uncomfortable meetings.
Sure.
If you as a coach did not hire that particular person.
And if that GM brought about a 5-star, 5 stars, then all of a sudden who's advocating for who? And, are those 2 5 stars in the room in every coaching decision? Like things, it's just really, I think it could be a great thing, or it could be toxic, like we're talking about.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see, and and you're going to have those. You're going to have it go both ways. Some people it's going to be a great working relationship, and then you're going to have to be, like I said, winning cures it all. It's one of those things. When you're winning, but when you're struggling, that could be the difference in you getting one more year and turning around, or you're not getting the year at all. And that affects a lot of people.
Now, moving on, Coach, I really want to get to this because I know this is going to be something deep for you, but what have you learned about yourself throughout your playing career and your coaching career, and even now throughout this broadcasting career? What have you learned about yourself from the game?
Wow, I've learned this from a good friend about Kevin Sutton, was to bet on myself.
Wow.
To bet on myself. There's so many things in this world you just can't control. And if you bet on yourself, you'll never disappoint yourself.
Yeah.
I can't be disappointed when I bet on me.
Yeah.
And because I'm in control of me, and that keeps me off an emotional roller coaster. So, and again, I've had so many instances. We talked about the injuries, and I've had that happen several times. And when you adapt and you learn from them, it just sticks with you. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've learned. It's just, there's so much I can't control. I've learned not to worry about the things that I cannot control and just focus on me. And because I won't disappoint myself.
Yeah.
I won't not work hard for me. I won't not work hard for my family. I would never not lead my family and be a proud dad, a proud husband, a proud father. And I carry that with me every day. And as long as I stay that way, then nothing else really bothers me. So I've learned that I'm very resilient, and then I can count on me, and that there's nothing that's gonna that keep me from waking up the next day and just trying to put my best foot forward, no matter how difficult or challenging that is. And like everyone, we've all go through. I'm 52 years old, and I've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't play the woulda, shoulda, coulda game where if this would have happened, I should be the head coach of this program or any of those things. I am very happy with where I am now. I'm where I'm supposed to be. And again, I've learned to believe in me and trust in me and love me.
Yeah.
And I wake up every day thankful for that.
That's strong, man. I mean, because your identity is in you, like you understand you, where a
Right.
lot of people don't, because their identity is caught up in something else.
Right.
Because when you've been successful, certain things, your identity could be in that which you were successful in, and not in the fact that you wake up every morning, look in the mirror, and you recognize that person, and you like that person, like you said, you love that person.
Right.
And so, kind of moving on to, like you talked about your family, like
Hmm.
what I guess how important has been your support system through all this? Because sometimes our support systems are our fellow coaches, our family, our spouses, our kids. Your support system, how important has that been for you, man?
Wow. My support system has always been my family.
Yeah,
And there's a few other people that adults. I mean, there's name, and again, if I start naming names, I'll get in trouble. But there's people like Rick Bird, and there's so many people. I mean, my close friends that I can talk to. I mean, you talk about even San Antonio with Tim. I
yeah,
mean, there's things that personal things that we can talk to. I I'm unafraid of being vulnerable or
right,
what you may think is vulnerable and explain to me because again I've made mistakes or I've had tragedy, I've had tragic events, I've failed,
yeah,
and I can be honest with my failures.
yeah,
My goal was just never to repeat them,
ooh,
and I can share them with the people, and I can share them with my friends, and I can share them with my loved ones. And so when I feel as though I can do that with you and we can have that type of relationship, it just says much. It'll say where we are. But for me, it's my family, it's my wife and my children, and I don't. There's a few others outside of that, but I don't expand too much with that because if I it's when you have that too, you got to take that on, and it can become overwhelming from when I say that with others. But for me, as long as my family's okay, then that's all the strength that I need to continue to do what I'm doing, and with the way my family is and the way we are, it just tells me, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing it right, and I've done it right.
yeah. It's like success, right? Because the metrics of success from coaching standpoint and even from playing is how many chips did you win? How many games did you win?
My
That's always kind of the measure,
Right.
but we're
I
talking
would
about
come into my house, Mike, and I tell you this when I say about my family. And I learned this. And again, you talk about mentorship. Jeff Battle, who's at Georgetown now, said this to me, and I never forgot this. And Jeff had lost his wife to cancer
wow.
while he was coaching, and I'm coming back to Wake, and I'm just getting into the business. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, Randolph," he said, and I reminded him of this recently. He said, "There's not enough hours in a day to do this job." He said, "People think, people have no clue, there's not enough kids you can call. There's not enough parents, not enough trainers, not enough moms, dads, sisters, brothers." I said, there's 100 kids and 100 phone calls you can make every day. You just can't do it. He says, but when you go home, make sure you're home.
Wow.
So when I walked in my door, Mike, I would pull up at my house sometimes, and I would be sitting in the driveway making phone calls.
Yeah.
And I would call maybe an hour. Sometimes it could be an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But when I walked in that door, I was home.
Yeah.
I had to be home. Now there was sometimes, again, the job is the job, right? But I would be like, hey, babe, I'm gonna have to call Mike tonight, for as we wind down after the kids. But my kids didn't care.
Yeah.
When they walked through the door, my daughter running downstairs, she's like, hey, and she's 100 miles an hour. Can you believe this was happening today? She wanted 15 minutes of my day. She's telling me her story. And I'm like, really? And then all of a sudden she darts back upstairs. She's going back to her room. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And my boys were that way. I had to pick up on their love language, right? I had to
Right.
understand what their love language was and what they were saying. My youngest son thing was when he started saying, hey, Dad, we want to go to the movies. It was like, uh-oh. He wants to talk. All right,
Yeah.
yeah, let's figure it out. When can I have an off day? Or when's the next time we can go? And then and we do it. Or I had to figure out those things, and
Right.
but my family was a big part of that, and they reminded me of that, and I'm grateful for them in that because again, this job is it's just any job in coaching. You give so much of yourself
Yep.
to so many different people, and sometimes we don't. We empty the tank and we come home, and that's tough. That's unfair
Yeah.
to our families. And so I've learned that early,
Yeah.
and if it meant, going into the reserves, I made sure when I walked through that door, I had enough energy for everyone in my house.
Yeah, man. Be where your feet are at.
Right.
And it's one of those things because I got 4 daughters, man. And at the end of the day, how they view every other man is going to be compared to me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's like, if I'm dismissive for every little thing they got to say, or like, yeah, get out of here, kid, skedaddle,
Yeah.
because I'm tired from the day. I was busy yelling at some other kids on a court somewhere, and I don't have the time for them. Then yeah, I get what I get at the end of the day. And like you said, pouring out ourselves. If we're not filling ourselves up, we have nothing to give our kids at home. And I think coaches we don't mean to do it like that. It's just we think at the moment we're living for the moment of just like, I got to give everything I have. I don't want to lose my job. I want
Yeah.
to keep everybody happy. Be a people pleaser instead of understanding I need to be a people pleaser at home. Not
That's why it's so important, as you're saying. It's so important that if you were an assistant on my staff, that I really cared for your girls,
yeah,
and that I come in there and be like, Mike, go home. Like what you're doing here today, you can do it at home. Bye.
yeah,
Don't come in here.
yeah,
It's just understanding that, and again, that's part of the job, right? And um, some coaches, I think, have gotten better from that. I think a lot of coaches have changed from COVID. They realized that most of us grew up in the time where we're 12 to 15 hours a day in the office. You don't have to do it that way anymore.
yeah,
And shout out to the coaches that have made that adjustment.
yeah. And that was smart because that work-life balance got a little bit more even. It'll never
Right.
be even. It'll
No,
never be 50-50.
no.
However, we figured out mental health, things of that nature, super
Yeah.
important. Physical health, emotional health. I mean, health came to the forefront of things because we looked around, there was nobody to coach.
Right.
And we go out there with the whistle, stomping on the floor with nobody to hear us. And we're like, okay, so then what's
And
the
you
goal?
realize, and what happens is when you're in it, you don't. And then when you realize, you understand this game's moving on without me. This
Yeah,
game is so much bigger than anyone or any individual, no matter who they think they are. Even
yeah,
the ones that the Hall of Famers, the legends, the game will continue.
yeah,
You mentioned Coach K earlier. Coach K is the GOAT. And I don't mean that the way the young kids throw it around. He is the greatest college coach that has ever done it.
yeah,
And Duke is still rolling without him. So
yeah,
it's just you realize that it's just it can be part of your identity, but again, you have to understand that and like you said, have your feet where you are.
yeah. So my last question is always about legacy, man, and not that you're done with anything and we're sending you out to pasture now that you're 52 years old.
Yeah.
But what I want to pose this question to you, Randolph. What would you want to be said of you when your time with the game is all said and done? Like when you walk away from doing anything with basketball, what would you want people to say about you?
One, I was a very competitive person, um, very competitive. Maybe too competitive in my younger years, some would say. But I think a really good listener, a really good friend, and an honest person. Um, and that's very transparent with people, and some like it, some don't, right? And those that do appreciated that about me, because if we were friends, if we did, you knew where we stood if we weren't, and if we were, I would, you know, thought enough of you to be honest with you about what you were doing and what you were not doing. And I'm in a world of college athletics, because it's so much going on. I don't even know if there's one word to describe it. Um, Being honest and being transparent is something that I don't know if a lot of people do.
Yeah,
And I don't hide anything from anybody. So I don't know if there's one word to describe me in that aspect. I do think forthcoming and honest, and loyal,
yeah,
very loyal to people. Um, but just I think carefree, loving guy. I enjoyed what I'm doing. I love to have a good time, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. So, my legacy for me, basketball wise, is so far down the road for what my legacy is. The most important thing to me is my family, and
Yeah.
and, and so it's as a husband and as a father, I crushed that. I can sit here and tell you I get that right. I that's all that matters to me, and
Yeah.
they know it. They know how important they are to me, um, and I don't even second guess that. Basketball wise, I gave it all I had. Physically, I gave it all I had. I won everywhere, everything that I was a part of. I always won. I always say I left it better than I found it,
Yeah.
and coming awake and coming into a difficult time and leaving, having it, they're still celebrating the banners. And in my professional career, NBA going to playoffs every year, and in Europe winning multiple championships. And I'm very secure and happy with what I accomplished in basketball, and I'm very happy with what basketball has given me in return. Every surgery, every bump, every bruise that I pay for it today, I'm grateful for it, because I got a lot of life lessons in this game. And so, again, the resiliency I've shown, um, the honesty I've shown, and the passion that I've shown, I think is something that people will always remember me for. And I'm grateful for it. I mean, like I said, I had a hell of a journey, and it's been fun, and I'm continuing to learn. I've never stopped learning. I'm not one that says, "Oh, old dogs can't learn new tricks." I'm still learning new tricks, and I'm grateful to be able to sit here in front of you tonight and discuss those things, and continue to learn and share, and share my journey and stories to people when I think they can help them in their decision making in their journey.
Yeah. Randolph, I appreciate it so much, brother. I really do. It's been
Likewise, man.
great. It's been really good. I knew you would add value. I knew it would be great. I really did. Like, in my heart of hearts, I was like, man, I need to have this guy on already, man. Like, let's get him on this show.
Anytime, man. You can, like I said, it's better to catch me now. But man, listen, you know something,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
me,
Yeah,
and I'll make it happen, man, whenever I can.
before you take my guy Jay Billis's spot as the face of ESPN, I better have you on, because then I'm gonna have to go through 10,000 people to get through you.
No. You got the number now, so you're good. You got the number now. Listen, your number got a name beside it now. I don't have to look at him like, who is this? So you're good now.
All right, brother. I appreciate you.
See you.
Take care, man. Thank you.